Hi, I'm Chris from CodeReviewVideos.com, and in this video I want to cover off what is perhaps the most frequently asked question that I get by people who are new to Symfony, and that can be Symfony 2 or Symfony 3, and that is, how do I get access to the information passed in via the URL? It can either be the request parameters or the query parameters. There are a couple of other variations of this, as we'll see, but basically what I'm talking about is when the URL's got something like /demo, user equals Chris, age equals 33 or whatever, or as I say, a variation on this might be to have it with a nicer looking URL where we've got /demo, /user, /Chris, /age, /33, and then also there's a variation where we'll be posting in some data from the form, or maybe we'd be posting in JSON data, which again is slightly different. So let's start off with perhaps the most common one, which is the user. And then what we'll do is we'll pop this onto the URL. And whilst it looks like nothing's actually happened, if we have a look inside the profiler for our request, we can see there are some get parameters with the key and the value that we've passed in. And the fact it's on the request kind of gives away what we need to do here. We need to inject the request. So I'm going to set this up. And you'll see this in all the documentation as well. It's a very common pattern. So we're passing in the request, and then from the request what we'll do is immediately we'll just dump it and we'll reload that page and see where we get. So you can see at the bottom there it's been dumped out, and we've got this request object with quite a lot of things on it. The thing that we're interested in, because it's on the query string, it's going to be under query, and then we look inside the parameter bag and you can see that we've got the same information there. So knowing this, what we can do is we can go into our request and we can say request, and it was on the query string, remember, so we can do a get and we can pass in, say, user, and we should expect to see now that the user of Chris is dumped out, which it is. And again, we could do the same for age. Now, because that URL looks a little ugly, what we can do is we can use placeholders instead to tidy it up. So we could have a URL, something similar to that. So we could say /user, and then whatever's passed into that placeholder will become the user variable, as we'll see in a sec. And then we could also have the age and do the same thing again. And so all we need to do is drop these things onto our method signature, and we'll just call them user and age exactly as they are in the placeholders. And now what we can do is just, in fact, if I just get rid of those two for the sec. And so we should expect to see an array with both of those in as long as we hit the right URL. So we'll say user Chris, age 33, and we've got our array. One thing to note here is that these are not query parameters or request parameters. They're actually attributes. So if we dump out the request and give the page a refresh, you'll see what I mean. So you can see under the request object, we've got attributes, request query, etc. And under attributes, if we go into the parameters there, you can see we've got user and age, and also the part of the root params as well. Now, one nice thing is that you might want to get access to the root name that you're working with, and so you can also do that there inside the attributes. So far we've looked at query and attributes, but you will also probably quite commonly work with request as well. So I'm just going to comment these two out as well now and jump across to a form. So I'm going to add a form to the page, just very quickly create one. And I'll pass this through to our template. So now if we reload the page, we should be able to see that, although I might have changed the URL slightly there. Let's just change this back. Oh, I also need to remove these as well. Okay, so we can see our simple form, and if we pass in some data and then take a look at the request, you can see that a form key has been passed in with the values that we wanted to pass in. So you can see we got some input, and that's the nonsense we passed in, and we've also got submit, which we don't really need, and our CSRF token, which is rendered for us in the background there. So I'll link to more info on that in the show notes. Now the important thing here is that we're on the key of form, so we can't actually get at some input directly, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So we'll dump off request, and you can see under request parameters we've got form, so we couldn't actually go ahead and go directly to do this. This would not work. We couldn't go request, get, and then our form field's called some input. So if we try that, we'll see that that does not work. So instead what we have to do is get the form, and then say we want, well, in fact, first of all, I'll just show you that that definitely works, as though you would expect it to at this stage. We can see that we've got our input and whatnot, but we can use a thing called array dereferencing to get access to that sum input. So what I can do is just put here is some input. So that's going to resolve to an array, and then we're going to get a value from the array from the resolution of that function. So it's a bit weird, but if you've never seen the syntax, basically that's what's happening there. So now if we submit as 456, then we should see 456. Honestly, it's less common to need to do that because of the way that you'll probably be working with forms inside Symfony. So it's just something to be aware of that you can do, rather than something you're going to be doing a lot, I should imagine. The last thing that I want to show you is it's quite easy to accept JSON in any Symfony controller action. So I'm just going to take a copy of this JSON that I've set up for my demo purposes. I'm going to create myself a post request that's going to go off to the Twig endpoint, or the Twig demo site that we've been using, should I say. I'm going to set the body to raw application JSON and paste that in and send that in. And we hit this and it works, but it shows off this demo page, which isn't quite what we expect. But if we jump across here and we go to our profiler and we have a look at the last request that came in, so aside from the get request we just sent to the profiler, you can see that we sent in a post request to the demo endpoint, and we have a look at that. And you can see that we've not actually got any parameters, which is kind of strange. But if we keep scrolling down, you can see that inside our request content, so inside like the body of the request, we did actually have some content which was JSON, but it's not quite formatted and whatnot in a way that we can use quite easily. So we can say data equals request get content, and that's going to be the raw string that's come in. So it's not actually going to be usable JSON, but we can do a Json decode, and we can decode that string into an array. And then because it's now a PHP array, we can just do something like add a new value on there. So we'll just say new value, and rather than render off a response like that, maybe we could just return some JSON. So return a new JSON response that contains our data, and we should now see the data that's passed in plus this new value. And there we go. There's 4 easy ways to get access to the request or query parameters inside a Symfony application.